I'm Krista Reiser,
And I'm Jay Reiser.
and we have Reiser Ranch by Washburn in Beulah, and we run a cattle operation. Cow-calf pairs is what we do.
Today we're part of the couples panel. We'll be focusing on what we do together in our ranching operation, some of the goals we've set for our ranch, some of the strategies we use to accomplish those goals, and then some of the decisions that we've had to make together.
Okay, a little background. We were married in 2007, but met Jay at NDSU the first day of my freshman year. I'd heard about him all summer, and this one friend kept talking about this guy named Jay, and I was like, oh, okay. Then I finally met Jay, and Jay was the cute cowboy from Washburn that I had always seen in FFA. I didn't know his name, I just knew he was the cowboy from Washburn from the letters on the back of his jacket. So we were married in 2007, and we purchased about 30 cow-calf pairs the summer of 2009, and our first calf crop was in 2010. We didn't really have much land to run on until we acquired our lease by Washburn in 2011. And then eventually we were able to purchase a ranch by Beulah in 2016. And so we kind of migrate back and forth between the two places. With the cattle, we just say we're nomads. And we have a May-June calving cow herd, and we like to leave the calves on the cow all winter until March, and we do fence line weaning. Usually we would keep our yearlings and run them with the main cow herd and sell those in September. We also do a little bit of custom grazing, and we direct market grass-fed as well as non-GMO grain-finished beef. So what really helped Jay and I get on the same course for ranching was the holistic management class that we took. We had a lot of mentors as well that have really helped us along. Supportive friends where we can talk about how ranching's not going so good. Without our friends, neighbors, and family, we wouldn't be where we are today. And then tying back to that holistic management course, setting goals for our ranch, because then we know where we want to go as a couple. And specifically, we're going to talk about the grazing goals for our operation today, because pretty much all we do is run cows on grass. So we're together a lot out in the pasture, so we needed to work together and learn together. So since we had goals, we knew how we thought things should look, and Jay will talk about that, like what we had to learn together. And then also the past 4 years, we've had to do a lot of drought decision making as a couple. But when we got started, we knew we had a lot of rangeland concerns, because what we were leasing had been under continuous grazed for years. So it was deteriorating really fast. So we knew that we had to have a really good set of grazing goals. We wanted healthy plants that are nutrient dense for our cattle. We wanted to make sure they had deep roots. We wanted diversity in our landscape, because when we were acquiring these lease lands, it was just Kentucky bluegrass and curly cup gumweed. So we knew we needed to improve that. The water cycle, we were getting a lot of rain the first year we were there, and that water was just running right off. We wanted to keep the ground covered, and we wanted to increase our production, because who wouldn't want to do that? And we knew we needed to feed our soil biology, and with all that, we wanted to build drought resistance into our ranch. So if it ever did happen, hopefully we'd be ready.
But then getting into some of the tools that we use in our grazing system, the number one is trying to get the cows to the right place at the right time for the right reasons. A couple different things we use for that is we'll do an intense rotational graze where we're moving cattle every day to once a week. We have done mob grazing treatments on parts of our landscape that require that, where we'll be moving up to 4 times a day. Some winter grazing, bale grazing has worked very well for us. We coin it our quality of life grazing. We have certain areas of land that are going to require a longer duration graze on it. We know where those areas are. So if we know that, okay, for the next week and a half, we got a lot of other things going on, we will move the cattle to those areas to free up the 2 of ours labor to do the other things that need to happen. Or if we want to go on vacation, we can build that into our system. Rest is probably one of the most important tools that we use, and Krista will get onto that a little bit later and how we've been able to make that work for us. Some of the ways that we attempt to profit on our ranch, strategically placed temporary fences are going to be the most important tool that we use. We try and focus on where the most productive areas are on our ranch, as we'll be able to see ecological and financial returns that are greater on those areas. We graze anywhere from floodplain along a creek up to rolling hills up to the uplands. And so with the temporary fencing, we're able to take into account some of the landscape features that we're seeing out there and manage those landscape features differently. We try and have our cattle graze uniformly, one for the better distribution of manure and urine, also increasing our harvest efficiency. All of this is to try and build in so that we can try and build biological wealth into our system. We might not be able to capture that wealth right now, but we're putting it in like a savings account to hopefully have it pay us back in future years. This is a picture of some of our money makers. We've become kind of inventive on how we do things, everything light and portable, since it is tall temporary, a couple different types of posts, and then we use poly braid on geared rollers, and we've become pretty efficient at how we can do it. This is a picture of the map of the main place outside of Washburn. When we first moved onto the property, there's very few cross fences on this. It was under, as Krista said, a continuous graze system before we took over management. But with temporary fence, you can make it look like this. And we were able to use it to our advantage. The one thing that we've really liked about temporary fence is we can change very quickly. If we don't like the way something worked out or want to change it the following year, we aren't locked into a system of permanent fencing. We can just move it or adjust it or make things look differently. We also have gotten to where we enjoy doing fencing together. We've gotten pretty good at it, which always makes it a little bit more fun. Plus, it's able to put us out on the land together, doing things together. And that kind of leads us into the next one. With doing as much temporary fencing as we do, it's been able to get us on the land, get us better at monitoring and observing what we're seeing. But when we started, that was one of the first hurdles that we had to come over, is we needed to learn together what we needed to see out there to manage the land this intensely. The number one thing being is for us to learn cow days per acre when we would look out at a landscape and see how much forage we had for our animals over that time. And then one of the things that we had been taught was to make sure we focus on animal performance first. And so we didn't really know what that looked like, so we'd take time and we would pick out certain animals within our herd and watch those animals over the course of the growing season and kind of use them as a gauge for us. But back to the cow days per acre on when we were moving animals in smaller paddocks, we had to get real good at learning forage allocation. How much land area and forage do these animals need for the amount of time that we want them to be there to accomplish the goals we want them to accomplish? We first and foremost watch the animals. Are they bellowing at us when they come out there? Are they content? Are they walking the fences when we're a half mile away and they can't see us, but we can see what they're doing? We had to learn how grass quantity and quality played into that over the course of spring, summer, fall, early winter. Planning and communication played a lot into it, so that when one or the other would see something, we could tell the other person what we were seeing and trying to say it in terms that each other would understand. And then going back to the forage allocation with our cell sizes, what goal did we have for that piece of land, and how did we want to set up our cells to get the correct trample to graze ratio to accomplish our goals? And we noticed in a big hurry that trample for us manifested itself in very different ways. We had some areas where it was very dense, heavy grass, and it trampled incredibly well and looked kind of the way we were hoping we'd see things. But then we'd get to an area like a shaded or a hillside, and things looked very differently. So we had to work together to train our eyes so that we could be on the same page on these.
We spent a lot of time in the pasture together, like we pretty much lived in the pasture together when we were starting out. And so as we'd go around, like we'd drive across old cells, and rest and recovery really became an important thing to us. And just a little definition, like rest is leaving a whole cell ungrazed for a full growing season or a critical portion, where recovery, we're talking more about like a plant. Depends on weather conditions, what type of plant it is, and maybe how severely it's grazed. So this is, when we first got started, we were so excited and went out and took a whole bunch of pictures. So this was before we even applied management. And luckily, we had a lot of rest, and that's what it looked like. And we're like, man, this is really good. We didn't even have to do anything. Rest is just such a huge advantage for us, letting those plants fully express themselves. And then with all our temporary fence moving and moving the cattle so often, we started looking and we're like, wow, we just moved the cows a week ago from the right side of the screen. And then, and then the cows had just moved off the left side. And even within a few days, we were seeing recovery of some of those plants. So, I would maybe move the cow the herd one day, and then Jay could go out there the next, and it could look completely different. So it was difficult for us to get on the same page right away because everybody looks at grass a little bit different. So we spent a lot of time calibrating our eye. Also, trying to create rations on the landscape for the cattle and the soil biology. And you can see how it was rested in 2013. There's a little bit more dead material in there, but when you graze it and then have the regrowth, that's a little bit more lush. So when we come in and trample that with the cattle, we're feeding the soil biology different, the cattle's ration is different. Us learning about the gut fill and looking at the same animals like Jay mentioned was just really important for us to get on the same page to make sure we were feeding the cows and feeding our soil biology. And I went over the grazing goals, but I want to talk a little bit about the drought resistance because we've spent the past 4 years in drought, so we've had a lot of discussion at our house about that. In 2011, we had a lot of rain. That was our first year getting started. 2012 was kind of dry late summer, and I didn't keep any records, and after those two big differences, I was like, maybe I should keep some records. So 2013 and 2014 were really good years, so we had 4 years where we were able to apply some really intense management to the landscape. And in 2015, things started to go downhill, and they've kind of gone downhill since, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we had to have a drought plan, so we weren't making these emotional decisions. And we wanted to protect our soil and our plants because they're the base, or they're the foundation of our ranch. And we had talked about we would sell our yearlings. They would be the first ones to go, so we could keep our cow herd intact. And also for us, it's really important to have the stockpiled forage for calving. So you can see this is May 2017, and that's not how grass is supposed to look in May in North Dakota. So May 2017, we're already planning where those cows are going to be calving May 2018 because we have to have somewhere to calve them. And then also what became an option for us, we put in water lines into our hayland in 2017, and we actually took advantage of grazing our hayland in 2018 because it wasn't going to make a hay crop. So we spent a lot of time on the landscape learning, how the grass is growing, and we knew the rest and recovery needs of the plants because we'd spent so much time out there. And we knew we needed to destock early, and we knew that because of our forage inventory. So we set trigger dates or decision dates, and they're not fun conversations to have. They're like our least favorite when you're like, oh man, do you sell all these animals or what do you do? So since we had 4 years of good management, 2015, with 9 inches of rain, things were going really well. Like our management really paid off. Like we didn't hardly see everything was recovering great. We were rocking and rolling. 2016, still doing really well. But it was getting kind of dry towards the end of 2016, and we're like, if next spring's not looking very good, we might want to consider selling our yearlings. So the end of April, we set the date that if there was no rain in the 10-day forecast in May, that we were going to ship all our yearlings off to try to save forage for our cow herd. Our cow herd also decreased that year, just some different situations with shared cattle. But we sold the yearlings before everybody else saw the drought coming. We topped the market, we were thrilled, and it was the best decision we made that year. Otherwise, we would have been in so much trouble. And by the end of 2017, we knew, well, we weren't going to keep that calf crop, so we sold our yearlings again in 2018. We shipped cull cows. We usually keep quite a few butcher animals running around, and that was a hard decision for us because we have quite a few customers. So we looked at the cost of feeding those cattle, and we knew we just had to get rid of them because what we needed to charge people probably wouldn't want to pay. So we sold all our butcher animals, we reduced our custom grazing so we could put some of our own cattle on that land, and we ended up destocking our main pasture by 90%, which was not fun, but the pasture really, really needed it. So we had a lot of extra physical work this year. We found pasture within about 80 miles and hauled cattle all over. Probably should have sold some, I don't know. We were just really trying to keep our herd together. But 2019, we're going to sell our yearlings again. We're limiting our butcher animals, and we've reduced our custom grazing again so we can keep some of our cows out there. I mean, we've been really hard on culling the past few years. So, yeah, it hasn't been a lot of fun of decision making, but we've had a lot of tough discussions in the past couple years and just setting those dates and trying to be proactive so we can make sure that we keep the land the number one priority.
And with all of these discussions that we've had on our, with the drought we've been prolonged in, it's really made us question our management because we'd been hearing people around different parts of the country that had continued to improve their land through a drought and actually came out of the drought in much better condition than they went into it. And we just weren't seeing that, and it was really kind of concerning to us because we'd look out on our landscape and we would see litter lost on all of our ungrazed areas. Where we did get regrowth, it was very poor. It burnt off very quickly, and the ungrazed areas that we tried to rest just was looking very poorly. Let's see. Hey, it worked. But the X on the picture here kind of gave us a little bit of a bright spot for us because as you can see running through here, we have a pipeline, and that pipeline sprung a leak. And I'm not sure if you can see real well, but where that pipeline sprung a leak, we had a huge flush of grass come through there. And the only difference in that area was that it actually received some moisture. So we realized that water was our limiting factor, and granted, maybe our management wasn't as far along as we had hoped it would be, but we're really hoping to see continued improvement once we do get rain. This is a picture that also gave us a little bit of hope as well. The green on the outside edges is where the creek actually flooded, and I think it flooded for a day and a half. So it wasn't very much water, but we actually saw some response, and the area that received no water, there was no response whatsoever last year. So as we work our way out of this drought, we're hopeful that we will be able to pick up where we left off before we went into it, and that together we've been able to make some improvements and cause a good starting point or a good solid foundation for our ranch, and by focusing on our soil health and our plant health. And we're optimistic that we're going to be able to, as we go forward, to continue to learn together. And then some contact information for us if anybody needs to get a hold of us. Anything else you had?